So it's not rolling very well. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So here we are. It's a new day. It's a new me. But you know what isn't new is my Bafang G62 fat bike motor. So before me, I have two G62 motors. This one is not laced into a rim. This one's doing okay. This one, however, had a problem. We'll get into that. You can see the nylon gears are not looking good on that one. So then here's the wheel for this guy that I was using on my bike. Right, so when I was riding yesterday, I've got this thing welded for regen right here. See this clutch? Welded for regen. So that means that this motor, usually this planetary gear assembly here, this clutch assembly, it'll spin one way and catch on, and everything's like spinning and the motor is spinning, and that's how it makes the wheel go. But then when it goes the other opposite way, it's just like freely coasts, because this thing inside of here, there's like a one-way clutch inside of here where it can just like spin freely one way and coast, and then it can catch the other way, and that's how it makes everything go, right? But so when you weld this thing, you can do regenerative braking, right? So then when this thing is welded, you know, all these planetary gears are spinning one way when you're going, but then when you let off of the power and the motor isn't propelling the bike, then all of the things start spinning the other way because this thing is welded. And so that's how it can do regenerative braking with a geared hub motor, is through that welded clutch modification. So what happened here, I was riding my bike, going pretty fast, 72 volts. It's probably going like 40 miles an hour, 40 something miles an hour. And then I hit on the regen braking hard. And it felt kind of like, I don't know, it felt weird, right? Like, and it was like, there were two instances. Like I was going on this road really fast, hit the regen braking, and then something felt a little bit like jumbly or like rough. I was like, ooh, what was that? But then at that point, the bike was still going, wasn't making any noises or anything. But then I basically got going fast again, and then hit the brakes, the regen brake really hard again. And then that time is when this happened. And so all of the teeth on the nylon gears got like shredded off. And so what happened was, like, I slammed on the regen brake when I was going really fast, and it was like I could feel the nylon teeth getting chomped off. Like, it was like I could feel it, and like the whole bike was like shaking, and like there's like crazy vibrations and stuff, and then it was making some crazy noise, right? And so I ended up pedaling home. It was making lots of noise when I was pedaling, and it was kind of like hard to pedal because there's all this stuff like stuck down in here. But yeah, so like basically all the teeth got stripped off the nylon gears, and we gotta fix this thing. But then I was trying to take it off of the wheel last night, and I was trying to make a video showing the steps. And there's this, so I'm gonna show you what I did wrong last time I put this motor together, so that you never do it and have the same problem that I did. But basically, there's these little like threaded lock nut things, right? Like there's threads in here, and then so you take these guys, and so if these aren't on there, and you take out these bolts on this opposite side, and that loosens up this cover, and then this whole thing can just slide out of here, right? Like that's how this thing comes apart, right? Just like that. But if this thing isn't in here, like if this thing is not down in here, and then you start threading these things on there, see, with the point of this spacer down in here is it fills in a little gap, like a 2 or 3 millimeter gap, maybe even more, maybe even like 4 or something. But that spacer down in here, it's not threaded. And so it just slides on here, but then it fills a gap in here where there's no threads on the axle. And so then as long as this spacer is in here, as it should be, you thread these guys on there, right, all the way down on there. And then these things, these little lock nuts, there's usually 2 of them. These are what hold the motor like into this shell, right? So that this thing can't pop out this way. There's also the bolts on the cover over here. But this is like the main thing that you do to secure the motor inside of the hub shell. Is you've got these guys on there, right? And so what I did, the mistake that I made was I didn't have this thing in here. And then those lock nuts, when I tightened them on there, they kind of went back on the axle as far as the threads went. But then there was still that gap behind there where that spacer should have been. And then so when I was tightening on the axle nuts, you know, when you tighten on your axle nuts and all of the hardware on your wheels to hold it onto the bike frame, you get all that stuff tightened on as far as it'll go. So then one of these nuts, since that spacer wasn't here, like it just got like pressed, and then the threads stripped off of it, and then the nut got pressed like all the way back onto the axle, super tight, all like the threads all stripped out and stuff. Like here it is right here, right? And so this thing was stuck on the axle way back in here, and I couldn't get the spanner on it to like wrench it off. And then I even went out and I grinded one of my spanners down so that the spanner could fit in there, but it was just like this was completely stuck on the axle. Like all of the threads were stripped out, and it was just like it was stuck on the axle, and the threads were kind of like holding it on there, and I could not wrench it out for the life of me. So what I did was I took a drill, and then I just like I had to drill this thing out. So I drilled on either side of it, and then it was easy to just kind of break it off of the axle instead of having to like wrench it off of there somehow. But yeah, so do not forget this spacer on your G62 motor before you put on those lock rings, right? These guys, like you gotta have this spacer in there before you put these on there, or catastrophe awaits, and you're gonna have a heck of a time getting the motor apart, right? So that was the problem I ran into yesterday. It was like I was just trying to get this thing off. I was trying to open it up, and like it was like I was wrenching around on this thing. It was impossible, and I finally just drilled it out. So this is garbage. It's a good thing I have 2 of these motors, and I have like, you know, spare parts like these lock nuts and stuff, so I can put this thing back together today here. And then so when I was drilling, I actually drilled into this bearing and f***ed up this bearing right here too. So I think I have some spares of these, and thankfully it was this one on the outside. So I should just be able to knock it out and then tap another one in with some kind of a socket or something. I think I have some spare bearings. So in this video, man, we're gonna fix this motor and put it back together the right way, hopefully. So we're gonna have to replace the bearing, we're gonna have to replace the nylon gears. I'll probably look the whole thing over as long as I've got it off of my bike. Alright, so I got a very dirty towel because this is going to become a very dirty zone very soon. So let's see here. Let's take a look at this disaster. So I'm just hoping that the magnets are all still okay in there. Like, it just seemed like it was the nylon that was getting grinded up, and everything else was okay. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping like it's okay if the plastic gets messed up. That's not too hard to fix, but if you mess up anything like in the rotor or in the motor core otherwise, like that's not fun. So let's twist this thing. Oh, and it's on there. It's gonna take some muscling to do this. Ugh. So let's make sure that we're not messing anything up here. I just heard it kind of... Alright, so we're not touching... Alright, it seems to be pulling up. I just kind of heard a little bit of a... as it was kind of breaking loose there. Oh. It's been a while since I took this thing off, so... Alright. Yours should come off a lot easier than this. Mine... Oh man, this is so tricky. This is... It like takes some muscle to get this off, buddy. It is on there so good. After I welded all that shit. Oh. Alright, so I can see it's coming off. You can see down here where that little GoPro, are you going? Come on, show me the screen, GoPro. You can see down in here there's that little key, that little parallel key, and you can kind of see that the parallel key is like staying in place, but then the clutch is coming upwards. So I'm just gonna keep wrenching this thing, which requires a significant amount of physical force here because of my modifications to the motor. Still coming. Ooh, this is so tight. Quite easy. There we go. Now she's loose. All right, so we can take our tool and it's just kind of pulling it all up for us there, and it's just gonna fall off. There we go. All right, so let's see what's going on here. So on the axle, man, here, oh my goodness. Look at the parallel key there, boys. Holy. Man, that is rough. I don't even know if that parallel key is still usable on that. Alright, well, I'm being told that my GoPro is turning off because it's too hot and it's like 67 degrees in here. So, yeah, so I don't know. This thing, look at this thing. Like, it seems like this thing almost got sheared off. So I don't know if I might have to pull one of these out of a different motor. Because this one, I don't think it can be trusted. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but it's like, that thing almost got sheared in two. I don't know how much longer this thing is going to last. I mean, it looks like this is done. Like this thing almost broke, this parallel key. So we might have to fix this. So I'm probably going to measure this thing and see what size that is. I'm not sure. Do you guys know where to buy these things? Because I think maybe if you could get one of these that's made out of like a harder metal or something, like it might make it stronger. But man, that thing is so messed up. So we've got like a number of problems in here. I think we might have to replace that, because if that parallel key shears off when you're riding, I think the motor would just like completely stop working, maybe. I don't know if the wheel would lock up at all. I'd have to think hard about that. But yeah, so we've got that. Let's clean this thing off here. We got the parallel key out. We've got the Planetary gear carrier off. So we're gonna have to fix those nylon gears here in a moment. First, we're just gonna clean this thing off a little bit. Clean off all of the evidence of trauma And there's just nylon stuck down in the sun gear right here. So I'm gonna need like a, let's take my little toothpick thing. So there's all of these little nylon chunks that are like completely stuck down in the sun gear. Look at this. So you gotta make sure that all this stuff comes out of here. It's really down in there, like stuck in there good. I had to get something that was metal that I could get this stuff out with. All right, so one important test to do when you've got your motor open like this is spin the rotor. Make sure that everything's still spinning and that no magnets are scraping and nothing is funny with your rotor. And then I also want to make sure that any chunks of anything that might have got in there, I can see the magnets. It seems like the magnets are glued in with something on this motor. It looks kind of like golden brown or something. I don't know if this is a little bit different than my other motor. There was no like visible adhesive on the magnets on my other one, but there's kind of like some kind of like a golden, it almost looks like the same color as copper. I don't know, weird. But yeah, so seems the rotor's spinning around the stator nicely, and we don't have any like dilemmas here. I see some chunks of nylon and stuff in here, but I might pull the rotor off. I'm not sure yet. It seems okay in there. It is at this point we need to sort out these planetary gears and this planetary gear carrier. So there's these little man, this thing is dirty, buddy. Let's get this cleaned off a little bit here. These nylon gears are just totally shot. Oh my goodness. Wow. Just cleaning a little bit of the grease off of here so it's not so dirty handling it. Alright. So what we gotta do now to fix our planetary gears, first of all, GoPro needs to not overheat. Secondly, we need our, where is the other, okay. So these are snap ring pliers. Some people call them like clips or circle clips, C-rings, whatever you want to call them, but they've got, it's like a pliers where you squeeze it, but then it opens is what you want, right? It's kind of a backwards, like reverse kind of thing. And so this, I got it at Menards. These are Tool Shop brand. Got them at Menards. Like, it was like $5 for both of these or something. So very cheap ones. Very, very cheap and janky. But what we're gonna do here is we're gonna hold on to the planetary gear carrier, and then you can see down on this is how these little nylon gears are held on to this gear carrier. Is we put this thing down, we gotta spin this guy around to the opposite side. Let's see here. Okay, so we put this thing, we get this thing down in the holes, and then you can, if you get these clips off decently, you can sometimes like reuse them. So let's try and get these things off gently, or else I think the new nylon gears might come with these clips, but I don't know, like if you can reuse them, I usually do. It's kind of a weird deal getting these off. It's always a little bit annoying using my snap ring pliers, at least. You really gotta like apply pressure downwards while you are wrenching this thing up. Always difficult. Okay, we got that one off, and then you want to make sure it doesn't go shooting across the garage. That's what often happens with these little clips. So I'm gonna put that aside, and then this nylon gear should just pop right out of here. Might take some persuasion. It may require a little bit of persuasion, like that. It's coming off. There it is. So then this is what we have. This is the kind of thing that the nylon gears stick onto, is this little guy right here. So we just have to do that for all 3 of these little Planetary nylon gears that we have. So how I generally do this, my snap ring pliers are a little weird. So I get the things in here, into the little holes. But then what seems to help is like to press down on the tip and then kind of like squeeze it really hard, and then it can kind of wiggle backwards a little bit, and then you lift it up like that. Is what seems to work best. Let's see if that strategy works good on this last one here. Ooh, that one is like a little bit weird there. That nylon gear is not spinning very well. Oh my god. I wonder if there's something stuck underneath there. That one's wacky, dude. This one. So I think the little bearing inside of this one might have got messed up. Let's see. Okay, GoPro, just start recording, buddy. Alright, so we're getting this last circlip off of here. This one, something is a little bit funny about this one. This one. Oh. This circlip is like, oh, I got it. Those things are something else, dude. Those circlips. Alright, so now we've got the clips off. This one isn't spinning very good. This other one, well, well, I guess neither is that one. Oh my goodness, boys. Alright, so you're gonna come off of here. Hey, this one does still have some teeth on there. Maybe like a third or like almost half of the teeth are still on that one. Look at how cheap these things look. And then this one is just coming off nicely as well. Alright, there it is. Man, this is something else, boys. These nylon gears. Weird. So let's see here. How many teeth do we have? So yeah, it seems like about, man, it seems like about half of the teeth just like completely stripped off. And it seems like it's like exactly, it's almost like exactly the same on all of them. This one has a couple more teeth on it. And then this one, let's see this one. Yeah, that's really interesting. It kind of stripped the teeth off evenly on all 3 of the gears almost. Like there's no teeth going all the way around here, and then you can see like right here is kind of where the teeth, where they're still on here. It feels like candle wax. These nylon gears are so weird. It's some kind of Chinese miracle that these things work in the first place. Alright, so these are garbage. We gotta go find the new ones. So the good thing about the nylon gears is, so what is this? Is this for the BBS HD? What is this? Yeah, this is a big old BBS HD nylon gear in there. That's not the one that we need. We need, what else we got? There's some more BBS HD ones. What do we got here? Oh, here we go. So here is a set of Planetary gears that we can use for this hub motor. The same exact kind that I had in there before. It's a 47.5 by 13.5 millimeter Planetary gear, 36 teeth, 8 millimeter bearings. So that's what we're gonna need. All right, so let's get these gears onto that Planetary gear carrier. And it does come with some of those little clips, the circle clips, snap rings. I can see them in there. All right, note to self, order more of these Planetary gears. We're all out, but for 3 of these gears, it was like $7 or something. So it's like, if you have one of these hub motors, just go on to AliExpress and buy some spare gears so that if anything ever happens to your motor, you'll just have them. And then you don't have to wait several weeks while they're coming from China. So I'm gonna go order more of those, like very, very soon here, today. Do I have any, what else do we have here? I always kind of wondered how these nylon gears would fare, the $5 AliExpress nylon gears. I kind of wondered what their fate would be. And I guess that was it. Total destruction and mayhem. But I did use them for a good while. I think I put those gears on this motor back this spring or something, like when I first got the flip ski and I was first messing around with flip ski and the hub motor on Vesk. I'm pretty sure that I've been using these gears since like probably like May or something, and it's November now. So I mean, these gears, it's not like they just exploded out of nowhere. They've been in service for a while. So we're gonna just get all this nylon and grease debris off of this Planetary gear carrier. So you can see the gears, they're actually, like a couple of these gears, for some reason, it seems like they're actually like rubbing against the Planetary gear carrier. So I don't know if this thing is like, I don't know if this thing is warped or what, but it seems like this gear and this gear, like you can just see, it was rubbing against the gear carrier, the circle right here from the outline of the gear. But then this one doesn't seem like it was doing that, so I don't know. When you weld these things, funny things can happen. So beware. Beware if you're gonna do that maneuver. Alright, so that should be good. That should be suitable for this. Now let's see here. We gotta get our gears out. Oh, some tape over it. There we go. So here are the gears, the exact same ones that were in there before that exploded. So maybe let's, they still seem kind of the same color, they're just kind of dirty from grease. So there's the new ones, here's the old one. Feels kind of like a waxy candle or something, kind of weird. Kind of some weird gears that I got on AliExpress last time. So then how we do this is we push these gears down on here with like this little bearing, the number. So there's kind of, you don't want to, you got to put these on the right way. So you put it on with the numbers on the bearing facing up, and there's kind of like a little bit more of a gap on this side. Like this is the way that the bearing presses down into the nylon gear. And then over here you can see that the hole is a little bit smaller on this side, but so we want them going down like this. So we're going to put these, wiggle these guys onto the gear carrier. Make sure that they spin nicely. They can kind of help the press on the bearing in the center when you're pressing it down on there, and don't press on the nylon. Okay. So look, like all of the gears, they are spinning freely. We don't have any problems here. All right, so then we got to get our little clips here. As long as these gears came with some new clips, I'll probably put them on there. And GoPro was overheating just a moment ago, and I'm sure he will be again shortly, but we'll get these clips started on here. Let's get them on the end of my tool. I guess when you're putting them on there, it can kind of help to just hold it a little bit until you get the tool inside of there. Man, it's a little bit trickier getting them back on there. Let's see. There. So we got that one on there. There it goes. So that wheel is held on there nicely. So we'll just get these other clips going on to our other planetary gears. It seems like what works best is to put the tool in there first, and then kind of like hold it down on the back side, and then squeeze the tool and push down, and I pull the tool up and off of there, and then you can kind of just push the circlip down in there. Okay, there we go. So those two are working nicely. Let's see here. How's this thing? All right. Then I've just got one more of these clips that we gotta get on there. There we go. All right. So that's all it takes to fix the nylon gears, is just to pop the old ones off with the snap ring pliers, get some new gears out, put the new gears on there, and we should be good to go. They're all spinning nicely, no issues. All right, so we're gonna set this aside for now. All right, so I'm just gonna go on AliExpress and order some more, like right now. Oh, here they are. I found it. 47 by 13.5 millimeter planetary gear, 36 teeth, 8 millimeter bearings. So it says 3-piece 36T. So that's the only color. All right, so here we are. So it's $6.98 for 3 of these gears, and then you get free shipping if it's over $10. Might favorite that, and then I'm going to add it to the cart, because that is what we need. I'm gonna have to pull another one of these out of a different motor. This man, this thing is totally chewed up. I gotta take a picture of this. I think at some point this thing would have just sheared off. Alright guys, so at this point we're going to take this cover off of here because it's getting a little bit annoying. So what you can do is you take the cable, motor cable, and then smush it up against the axle, and then you can kind of like wiggle this cover down off of here. Let's see. Alright guys, so after a short physical workout, I was able to wiggle this thing off to this point. This cover plate. Oh my goodness. So we are gonna, on this part, you really gotta squeeze this part through. I don't even know, I'm not sure, does this thing go through? I don't know. That's crazy that even fits through there. That is a tight squeeze, buddy. I think I'm just gonna leave this right there for now. So it seems like, so this, all this goop here, I don't know if you can see that. All this goop here is thermal paste, thermal glue that I put in here. And then I've got a thermistor and it's soldered to that negative thing on the circuit board. And then the thermistor goes here, and there's like a hole in this printed circuit board. And so the thermistor is kind of hanging down in here. And there's a little dab of thermal glue under here. And it's the thermal glue, it is on the motor windings a little bit. But everything is kind of connected in there. So the thermistor is down in there and the windings pretty much on this motor. So the thermistor on this motor should be a pretty good reading, and hopefully the Amazon.com thermal glue doesn't mess anything up. I don't know if you guys can see in there, but there's a thermistor gooped down in there, and it's coming down through this hole right here. And then one leg of the thermistor goes to the negative, and then the other leg of the thermistor is going out to, I soldered this other leg of the thermistor to that motor wire that the speed signal usually goes over. So it's probably like the white wire or something. I can't tell. So that is my temperature sensor, all that goob on there. And then I cut a wire off of the printed circuit board and then hooked it to the thermistor instead. So the windings seem okay. Let's get them in the light a little bit here. They seem okay. There's probably like some dirt and stuff in here. Like some brake dust maybe, because I have holes in this thing. Right, I've got this thing vented and there's holes over here. So I think from braking, like there's probably like some brake dust and some goobers that get in here. There's definitely brake dust that probably gets in here just because it's so close to the brake rotor. But I don't really think that anything is like burnt up. Like if I rub kind of like the spots that look darker, I think a lot of it's just kind of brake dust. I'm not sure what this goober is. So I think the motor's doing all right. Okay guys, so if you hold on to the axle and you spin around the rotor and it feels okay and it doesn't feel like there's any like, usually you can look at this thing, look down at this thing, and if you see any magnets, you can see the magnets in there. Like if you see any of the magnets and they seem like they're sliding out of the thing and they're not like nice and flush with the rotor shell, then that indicates that the magnets are moving around and loose and no longer stuck in there. But all of my magnets seem good and everything seems like it's spinning nicely. And I do see one little piece of nylon gear that managed to get in there, and it looks like it's maybe stuck on some grease or something against the edge. So I'm just going to use a little iFixit tweezer thing and kind of grab that out of there if I can. Let's see. Okay, there it is. So there's just one little chunk of nylon gear. Now if there's a lot of chunks of nylon gear in there that you could see, then I would maybe pull the rotor off of here. And so you gotta take out these 3 Phillips screws out of the sun gear. And then there's like this clip thing right here that you can kind of, it's not you don't use the snap ring pliers on it, you just have to like wrench it off of there with the wrench. So you can take a wrench and then get it in here and kind of grab it and then use the leverage of the wrench and kind of get this ring up this way, and then be careful that it doesn't shoot across your garage and get lost. And then it's pretty easy to snap it back on there with the pliers. So you'll have to take that snap ring off, that circle clip or whatever it is right here, and then take the 3 screws out of that sun gear to get that sun gear off of there. And sometimes this sun gear is like stuck on there really good, and these screws, don't strip them out. These screws, very easy. It's very easy to strip these screws out. I think they're like Phillips 2 or something. You might need an impact to loosen those guys out. Like you wanna impact them on there fairly well. They are Phillips, and they're notorious for stripping out. And there's these 3 other little holes where you can use those. I think they're like M3. You use the bolts that go onto the cover over here that hold the cover on. You can use those same bolts, and I think you thread them down in here, and you can kind of thread the bolt down in there, or the machine screw, and kind of wiggle it around to get this sun gear off. Right, so circle clip first, then take off the sun gear, and then you probably have to use, similarly, use a gear puller. Put the gear puller onto the axle, get the jaws of it. You have to be very careful when you're using the gear puller that has such big jaws over on this side, because you only want it to be touching this outer metal ring part. I wouldn't get the gear puller up against any of the magnets at all, and definitely don't get the gear puller. You can't have these jaws going anywhere. You really don't want it going anywhere beyond this rotor shell, right? But I think if it's going against the magnet, like I could potentially loosen the magnet on accident, which is why I advise against that. But then if the jaws of the gear puller are going past the magnets, then when you're trying to pull this thing apart with the gear puller, like you're just gonna break things. So because that's the part that comes out, right? That the inner part. So just keep the jaws of the gear puller right on the edge of this metal ring. Try not to get it on the magnets at all when you're pulling that thing off. And you've got to you can't pull that thing off until you loosen up these things over here, right? That circle clip and you got to get that sun gear off of there too. I think there's another circle clip, or it might be a snap ring that's underneath of this sun gear. So it's kind of the same thing when you take this sun gear right here off of there, off the rotor shell. So then this is the noisy boy, the 6.5T Grintech Bafang G62 motor that I've been running. Alright, so I don't think I need to take that apart because I managed to use the tweezers to get that little chunk out. And that was really the only little chunk that I see down in there, nothing else. I would have thought that it would get a lot dirtier with those vent holes. There was a little goober right there. I don't know what that was, but I got it out of there. I would have thought it would get dirtier with the vent holes in there, but it didn't. It doesn't really seem very dirty over on this side, other than just a little bit of nylon gear shrapnel. Alright, so I'm not going to take that apart. I do have a temperature sensor on there, so that didn't come stock. And hopefully you guys can see how that looks on there. It's hard to tell under the glue, but thermistor's got 2 legs on it. It's pretty, you just hook it to two points in there. It's pretty simple. There's some white goobers over here that look like some kind of thermal paste or something that I accidentally got on there. Everything seems alright. I mean, this motor is fairly new. Other than setting the phase amps a little bit high and destroying some nylon gears with this thing, and messing up a hall sensor accidentally. I wonder which, it was the green hall sensor that got messed up somehow. I don't know which one that is. Other than messing up the hall sensor and breaking some nylon gears, this has been working pretty good. Even with the regen. I like it more than my G62 that I got from Green Bike Kit. It's a 6T. This one's 6.5. And Grintech, they have their like custom laser etched markings on here. G62 fat bike hub, 190 millimeters, 8 RPM per volt, 50 pole pairs, 6 pulse speed. It's got the wiring diagram of the motor connector on here, and then it's got your Bafang, your standard Bafang markings over here. It does have a sticker on it that says 20-inch wheel, but I think that's just a Bafang sticker. And then you've got the RM.G62.1000W, and it's 6.5 on the Grintech one, which is nice and torquey for a 26-inch fat tire. And it's 190 millimeters is the width of this guy, so that's from like over here where the lock nut goes on, and then over here to where the lock nut goes on, like the width of your dropouts. It's 190 millimeters. There's also a 175 or like 170 or something. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I've got to get this thing. I've got to get my Planetary gear carrier with the welded clutch back on here, but we need to get a different parallel key because this one's all janked up. Look at this thing. This thing is all janked up. I don't know how long this would last, but before it just like shears off. GoPro, your screen is so dull here. Brighten up. It seems like this thing's about to break. Very close to shearing off. Especially when I look at it right here. I don't know if the GoPro can see this, but thing looks like it was just about to break. So I need to find a different one from a different motor. Looking at you. I'm looking at you, buddy. Alright guys, we gotta measure this parallel key so that we can attempt to find a replacement. Let's see here. Let's zero this thing out. GoPro? You seen these things? Alright, so let's open this thing up here. So what is the approximate width of it? Seems like it's probably about 5 millimeters. And then man, it was probably 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters. And then, let's see here. What's the length of this thing? Whoa. $10 millimeters. So the parallel keys, it's about 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters by 10 millimeters is what I've measured here. So I'm gonna have to figure out something else. Maybe look on AliExpress and see if there's any on there. Alright, so it seems like this bearing actually gets pressed in from the opposite side, and it's inside of this cassette assembly thing. So you gotta take this thing off to fix this bearing. And actually, man, that is weird. Does that just press in there like that? Does that press in there from this side? Man, I think it presses in from the other side. Yeah. So I think I gotta take this whole like cassette thing off of here. There's these screws on the side. Let's get this thing going back here a little bit. I've never taken this thing off before, so let's see what happens here. They're Phillips screws, and we're gonna put this baby on. Let's see here. Putting some body weight into it. So we're going the right way, right? Yeah. Alright, got that one started out. There's a lot of gunk down in here. From I think it's wax or something. Let's see. Can't even really get my driver down in here. It's gooped up. And it also got all scraped up from the chain when the chain derailed at some point. Let's see. Man, is it even going in there? It's kind of a scary situation with that screw. Okay, that one's coming off. Let's see here. Oh, fuck. Son of a bitch. I had a feeling it was going to happen on that one. Some of these got really scraped up when a chain came off at some point. I think the BBS HD was probably on here, like, really wrenching on a chain. And the chain derailed and it got all scraped up, and that's why it's so crazy on here. We might have to drill that one screw out of here, I don't know. And then this one, I can't even seem to get, there's a couple of these screws where the chain dropped off and just like mangled the screw head up. So it's a little, man, this one doesn't look very promising either. This one, oh boy. That one came out brutal. This other one's not looking good. We're probably drilling this one. Yeah. Alright, well, unfortunately, this is what it's come to on this screw, is we're gonna have to screw this one out of here somehow. So, I've got a little drill bit on my impact here. Oh my god. Okay, so I guess we got it off of there somehow. Oh my goodness. So let's see what we have here. So this piece, it says Bafang, and then it says YH.GH10.8-PDL. Bearing right here says 6002RS. Bearing here, I don't know. It does seem like it's a potentially, let's see here. This is an interesting contraption. I don't know how, like, I don't know how this thing works. I'm not sure how this bearing gets in there. But it looks like it definitely got pressed in from this side. I don't know. Maybe that is so weird. It seems like this bearing must get pressed in from the inside, because there's like a little ridge right here on the outside where, like, I'm not getting that thing out. But then on the inside of this thing, this bearing must be inside of this spinny piece, and then somehow they put the spinny piece on from this direction or something. I don't know. I'm not sure how to deal with this bearing here. Get that thing out of there. Because there's definitely like a little, there's like a little thing here in front of the bearing that is holding it in there. That's pretty weird. Actually, I don't know. Is that just pressed in from this side? I mean, I guess we can try and just pry it out somehow, but it, man, what kind of a bearing is that? So I think over here, if we can somehow get this thing, this little spacer out of here. Let's see, can we get that all the way here? Did I just break these damn tweezers? What kind of shitty tweezers are these? I fix it? What are these for? What is the purpose of tweezers that just break on purpose? I don't know. Some specialized fucking use case. There it comes. There we go. What does it say in there? I can't even... Is there two of them fuckers in there? No, that's the bearing right there. So what does it say in there? Ugh. Alright guys, so actually the bearing over on this side, it says 16001RS. 16001RS. So this bearing is different than the bearing right here, the 6002RS. This is 16001RS. I don't know that I have those. We might have to take this thing off of this motor and just use this whole piece here. Seems like the path of least resistance. Because I don't think that I have one of those. 16001RS. I had to pull out this little dust cover to be able to see that. Over on this side. Oh, that dust cover goes in there good, buddy. But yeah. I don't know if I have those bearings. We might just have to take that part off of the other hub motor. What is this one right here? No, this is some. Alright guys, so what I'm going to do here is I messed up this bearing that is inside of here. And it's like, it's some other different bearing and I don't have any spare ones. And it seems kind of tricky to get in there. Like, I don't even know if that thing comes... I think there's something that's holding it in from this direction. And then I think it's inside of here somehow before they put this thing together. So I'm not sure if you could just... It seems like the bearing is in there behind something. So... This thing might have to be replaced as a unit. I don't know how this thing comes apart or what's beneath this bearing, but I don't feel like messing around with like pressing multiple bearings and things right now. I think a replacement one of these is like $30 or something. I think I've seen them for sale before. So I'm just going to take this one off of this other motor that I have. Let's see here. GoPro. All right, GoPro. Hello, GoPro. Alright. I'm going to take this one off this other motor that I have. So we're gonna use the impact to just get this guy out here. Let's get all this shit off of here. It took a little gentle nudge to get this one out. The new one. There it is. Still sounds almost identical to the old one. So I'm just going to keep this around for parts. If I fix this bearing, I could use it. It did get a little bit chewed up here when I used my BBS HD as a mid-drive, and it was driving this cassette free hub body. Definitely some kind of like oil that's inside of this thing that's seeping out of it. Yeah, I don't know how this works. That warrants further inspection, but for now we're gonna use the new one because it's got new bearings in it. So we're gonna take this piece and then put it back on my wheel. And we'll use that, and this will be my spare buddy over here. Alright, so here we go. Let's get this new one back in here. Slid in there nicely, and then we'll get all of these. You gotta bring the screws in and drive them in from the other side. It's kind of a funny deal. So you gotta, I guess you just can kind of hold this thing up. It seems like these screws come with Loctite on them. Alright, so I've got my impact on low mode. Number 1, tightening clockwise. And we're going to drive these in there. Nothing too crazy, but we want them nice and secure. So I'm just going to kind of snug them all with the impact first. Maybe let it give it a couple little hammer motions. Alright, so it seems like those are in there pretty good. Let's see. Alright, so now we should be good there. So we've got that thing back on there. We really got to make sure that there's this spacer in here. And it's, man, it seemed like, let's measure this thing. Looks like the inner diameter is about 12. And then the outer diameter is it's kind of tapered, but it looks like it's close to 19 millimeters outer diameter on this thing. And then how thick is it? 2.89 on the thickness. Kind of weird. Next up, we need to get my welded clutch back on here. And man, that is always a hassle. Alright guys, well like I said, ever since I welded it, I think this part, the circle, kind of like warped ever so slightly. And it became very difficult to get this thing on here. Like, it doesn't just slide onto the axle anymore. Like, it takes a lot of effort and work to get this thing back on here. So I'm gonna have to use my big gear puller and like pull this thing back on here this way. And I've like, you shouldn't usually have to do this, but this is what I have to do, just because I've welded this thing and this hole kind of warped a little bit. Alright, so I've got like this nylon brushy thing, and I'm just coming in here with this. Oh, don't lose the parallel key, we only got one of those. Alright, so I'm just coming in here with this little Park Tool brusher. I don't know, what is this thing for? Like getting dirt off of your chainring or something? Yeah, something like that. Scraping gunk off your cassette. Stuff like that. Alright, so it seems like I got all that stuff out of the sun gear. I really had to take like a really like fine-nosed tweezers here and kind of like pick in there to get some of those chunks of the nylon gear out of the corner. It was just embedded everywhere. Alright, so I'm not going to take the sun gear off or pull the rotor off of the rest of the motor at all. We're just going to get this, we're going to get this shaft key, the key stock back in here. 5mm by 5mm by 10mm. Alright guys, so here's how I'm calibrating my jaw puller to pull this thing back up onto the axle since it's so tight. Like I said, you shouldn't have to do this unless you weld your clutch, and then you have the same problem as I do, where it's too tight. And so this is a very tricky operation, and I don't like doing it. I also had to make a modification to this tool to make this work, and to make everything fit here. Okay. So we should be able, I had to grind off like the inside of the arms on this thing so that it would fit around the rotor when I do this. This is always very tricky, boys, when we do this. So I don't want the parallel keys down in here, that key stock, I don't want it moving around, so I'm gonna try and, okay, there's just a tiny amount on there, just a tiny little blotch of it. Hopefully that is not going to be a problem. And it can just kind of hold it in there for us. I don't know if you should do this. This is just what I'm doing, just to be clear. Okay. So I've smushed that down on there with a little bit of super glue. Alright, so now that thing should stay in there while I use my gear puller to manipulate this. Alright, so let's try and we'll keep that jaw down there, and then we'll bring this one over here. Let's see. With this. Bring this thing up like this. Okay. And I'm hoping that we can tighten on these jaws of doom in the correct spot. And the parallel key doesn't fall out. It's a lot easier to do this when it's upright, to get these jaws of doom adjusting correctly. I like to just hold it straight upright. Alright, so I've got all this stuff. I'm gonna use the gear puller to pull this baby up. And so let's see if we can just do it by hand a little bit. So you want to make sure, and why I had to grind off these arms is like the arms need to clear the rotor shell. Like you don't want these arms pulling up against this rotor shell. You only want the jaws, the very end of them, pulling up against the planetary gear carrier. And so it should be on there. It seems like, okay, so we pulled it up a little bit. I want to make sure my nylon gears are lining up with everything else down here. And you can kind of feel when they are. And then, this is kind of going on there easier than I remember. Let's see. Gotta make sure that the gears are interfacing with that sun gear correctly. And then, so it's kind of like to the point where I can't squeeze it by hand anymore. And this is where we start doing this a little bit. And just keep going. And then as I'm doing this, again, I just don't want this arm touching the rotor and pulling up against the rotor at all, and that's why I grinded a bunch of this arm off so that it would clear. Okay. Alright, so we've got this thing on there. You should be able to see that that little parallel key in there basically comes to the edge of this hole. And then when you spin the rotor, those nylon planetary gears should be able to spin without touching anything else. So it is at this point that we can get some grease down in here. So I'm gonna go find my grease. Everything seems to be spinning nicely both ways. We've got the clutch welded, so it goes both ways here. Everything seems nice. Let's go get some grease. Alright guys, here we go. So I've got the... What is this? This is the stuff that I use. And don't tell me that it's the wrong stuff, because I've looked this up many times. Everybody always tells me it's the wrong kind. But we just established that white stuff that comes in the motor is very tacky and very sticky. This stuff is not. This stuff is way better. This is a Mobile SHC, Mobilith SHC 100. Synthetic grease. Lithium complex. So it's just a red lithium grease. Okay, it's still lithium grease, but it's even better. So this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to shut my super glue so it's not spilling. Alright, so let's grease this baby up. Let's get some of this grease going into the gears. Let's kind of smush it down in here. Alright, let's get this down in here. And I just kind of smush it down in there. And then kind of spin this around. And it just has like an auto grease function where you can just go like this and it just auto greases. You see that? The auto grease function, isn't that sweet? Nice. All right. So that should be pretty good. And we can just continue putting this back together. Okay, so this is exciting. We're getting there. We are getting closer. So I can just pull this little connector back through over on this side. And then get this cover plate. Oh, get this cover plate going back onto the axle. Man, it's a lot easier going back on there than getting it off of there, that's for sure. That was a little bit funny, getting this thing back on there. There we go. There it's going. There it's going on. Oh, there it is. There it is. Now we got it. Isn't that a crazy thing? Nice. All right, now for this thing, guys, we gotta use my little bristler brush here and get all of this junk. See this guy? There's all this junk from when the gears exploded and stuff, so I'm just gonna try and get this out with my bristle brush. All right, guys, so what I just did here was I used these really fine tweezers that don't break, the metal tips, very pointy metal tipped tweezers. And if you can see it all over the towel here, there's these little nylon shrapnel pieces everywhere, and that's what I had to pick out of there. It was like a dental cleaning, except worse. It was like doing dental cleaning on somebody with 100 teeth that were made out of nylon that all exploded. So now we've got this guy, and so we're gonna pop the motor back in here. And so I don't know, let's see here. Did I want to do anything with these plugs? All right, so I'm gonna push these plugs through these holes that I have. So I guess if you get the plug very flush here, and I am able to push it into these existing holes that I had in here. It was just when I was trying to push it in from like an angle where it wasn't working. So I guess I didn't need to make this hole bigger. So we've got the nylon gears back in here, good to go, spinning around, nice and lubed up. Plenty of grease in there, so we're gonna get some gloves on because I just washed my hands and I would like to keep them clean. And then we are gonna pop this guy back in this way. Now that I've cleaned everything out of there. Okay, so now we're going back through there. Okay, so now let's... It seems like the plugs are staying in there, so I don't think there's any kind of a problem with it clearing anything. Alright, so now I need to go find my bolts for this cover and then the lock nut for the opposite side. Let's see, are they up here? Oh, I think I forgot something. This little like shim thing was supposed to go on here first. Let's pull this back off. Oh, that thing is heavy, buddy. I don't know like how critically important this little shim is, but it usually goes on there like this. And then we can run this thing back up in here. Just like this. Let's get all these bolt holes lined up to screw everything back together. So again, for these bolts, I'm going to kind of use my fingers, put them in there, and then go counterclockwise gently until I feel them drop down into the threads, and then I start threading it on by hand because I don't want to strip out these threads. It'd be annoying. I don't know how easy it would be to tap more holes for some of these pieces of the motor because the tolerances are just so tight. So you don't want to mess up any of the threads. Alright, there we go. And I'll get my Allen, tighten these on there all the way. And I always start threading these bolts in first because if you have a 160mm brake rotor on here, sometimes it's kind of in the way and your Allen goes in there at an angle. And then so you don't want to thread the screw in there at an angle. Like you want to get the screw threading in there first. Alright, so we've got all those bolts going into the cover on the brake side. Everything looks like it's on there, so we're going to flip this thing back around. Oh! And then we've got to get those lock nuts going onto this side. So let's see here. We definitely have to get this spacer back in here, right? So that's going to be the first order of business, because then if that's not in there, you guys know what happens. You learned it in this video. Pop quiz, what happens if you don't put this thing in there? I'll give you a clue. It had to do with switching this whole thing over because of one bearing. So now you can see we've got that spacer in there, and the threads go all the way up next to it nicely. So now we can get our little threaded lock ring things that go on there to hold it. So I mean, these are basically, it's just like, I mean, I think it's like the same as the same kind of thing as this washer, except it's threaded on the inside and then it's kind of got like wrench flats on the side of it. These things are pretty annoying. I don't really like these things. I wish it was just one piece. Now let's see here. What's going on? This is kind of wacky. I'm gonna have to go get my... It's a little bit tight right there. Should go get my wrench, wherever that might have gone. Alright, so we're gonna use this guy just to gently coax this lock nut on here. What's going on with this? Sometimes the axles get a little bit like mangled up towards the end where you're wrenching on the axle nuts and like your dropouts and stuff. Hopefully this axle nut, hopefully this thing's going on there properly. Okay, it seems a little bit better now that I've twisted it on a little bit. It was going on there a little bit sketchy at first. It kind of, there we go. Yeah, it was just the end, kind of, it seems like. Maybe not, let's see. Yeah, these axles are crazy after a while. Because you're just wrenching stuff onto it all the time. Let's see, can we... Alright, well... Alright, so I really kind of had to wrench this lock nut down the axle. It's like... I think when you're doing regen and the axle kind of shifts around in the dropouts, the threads can get a little bit goofy on the axle. So I'm not gonna... So when you tighten this first lock nut on there, like it should be sticking out enough past this rubber thing. Like it should basically just line up flush with... Alright, so I've got the first lock nut on here. And it's kind of just perfectly flush. The bottom of it is perfectly flush with that rubber thing, and then the top is sticking out like so. So that's how we want it. If we don't have this spacer underneath it, then that lock washer will start to go like in past the rubber thing. And that's bad news. So now we're gonna get this other one on here, and it's probably gonna be a whole wrench-a-thon again. So let's make sure it's going on there the right way. And then, yeah, it's gonna be a wrench-a-thon. Alright, so we've got our 2 lock nuts on there. This thing's spinning. I've got the regen gears going, but if we twist the axle with a wrench or something, like... There's a little bit of resistance just because I've welded that clutch, and it's got to spin all the gears inside there. It's hard to turn by hand, but it seems like it's spinning pretty nicely like that. So we can mount this baby. I'm going to put some silicone glue on that one plug that's a little bit loosey. And then we can probably plug this baby back in, get this thing back onto the wheel. I got to put my cassette back on here and the cassette lock ring. But we're getting there, boys. Like, this motor should be fixed at this point. Just got to get back on the bike, make sure that it's working okay. So I'm not going to plug the holes on this side of the motor yet, because the circuit board and all the stuff inside of there comes pretty close, and these things go pretty deep, these plugs. So I think I'm going to have to, like, cut some of this off, like 3 millimeters or like a little bit off of these, to make them fit on this side, because I don't think that there's any way that those would clear the stuff that's inside of there. You can see the circuit board right there, and it's not very far in there. Let's see. Alright, so it seems like what I did before was I had some spacers on this thing to fill in this 9 or 10 gear cassette thing with a 7 gear cassette. So we're gonna get this going on here. We're gonna sort out where's that little piece, and then get that lined up with this. Here we go. And I'm not gonna bother to replace this because it is a hub motor where the gears barely even matter, buddy. So I think that this little rubber guy is supposed to go down in here beneath everything. Is this supposed to go down in here as well? Let's see. It does seem like this should go on here somehow. Kind of smush it on there with this. Alright, we don't want to smush it on there too hard and mess up that bearing. There we go. Nice, 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 nice. Alright, so now let's get this cassette lock ring. Whoop, 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 whoop. GoPro, you still going? Let's get our cassette lock ring going in this guy here, and then we'll... Alright, there we go. So now we've got our lock rings on the axle. The cassette is back on here, spinning nicely. Alright, let's get all these tools out of the way. Let's make way for the G62 noisy boy. He's going back on there. Let's get our Velcro things out from underneath here. Alright, we gotta get this wheel going on here. But first, we need to get these little buddies. Where are they? Our tabbed anti-rotational lock washers. Some people call them like a torque washer, like a torque arm. It's basically what they are. So let's get the wheel. And then what I do is I usually aim these tabs downwards. I want it kind of like by where the cable is exiting, wherever the closest point is to there. So the cable is going to be exiting like, let's see here, we gotta spin this thing around. Spin it around this way. So the cable is going to be exiting down, so let's see here. So I'll probably orient these things on there like this. There we go. So now I'm just going to kind of bring this wheel in here. Ugh. And then, gotta come down here and pull the chain kind of like over the axle a little bit, and then orient this thing. Let's see here. We gotta get this drop out going in the right spot. Over on the other side. Get my derailleur out of the way here. Let's see. There we go. Let's go back over to this other side and guide that towards the dropout. Okay, there we go. That's what we wanted. Alright. So I do that because I like to use the weight of the bike to make sure that your axle is going all the way down into the dropouts. Ugh. I need that tool that holds your bars straight automatically. Alright. So now we're gonna get some torque arms going on here. So how I had this working before was, I believe it goes like this. Let's see here. No, I gotta flip this. Like this, there we go. And then this piece I had going on here, is it like this? Yeah, okay. We're gonna get this other torque arm going here. Let's see. Oh! Alright. So we're getting this torque arm going down like it should be. Down there. And let's see here. Yeah, this is the side where I put a little spacer on this because otherwise the axle nut isn't long enough to cover all these threads. So I put a little spacer right here, and then I put my axle nut on like this. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to use my socket. What is this? This is a 19, so it's a long or a deep socket or whatever you call them. So I use a 19 for the M12 axle nut. And then I don't care about the torque arms right now. We're just kind of tightening this on there to bring the dropouts together, and then let's see here. Let's tighten on this side. We gotta tighten up these dropouts, so that all this stuff goes together here. There we go. Kind of squeezing my frame together, the steel frame. Alright, so now that we've got everything like kind of tight and snug. Okay, so I've got the bolts going into the torque arms, and we can start I'm going to tighten on these axle nuts now that all the torque arm stuff is like pretty lined up. Alright, so I'm going to use some of these reusable zip tie, Velcro zip tie things. I usually use a short one over here to keep the motor cable away from the brake rotor bolts and the brake rotor itself. Alright guys, moment of truth. Let's plug in little baby Samsung. 52 volt, 8 amp hour. Our little battery right here. Let's plug them in the correct manner. Okay, now let's engage the key switch on the flip ski. Oh, boom, 58.5 volts. Let's get onto the VESC tool app on my phone. Start up a screen recording. Here we go. Alright, so let's see how the bike is doing. So I can see it right here on Bluetooth. We're going to connect. Alright, so let's see here. So in our motor config, let's go over to general and voltage, or we'll go to additional info and then setup. And then so let's make my battery cells series 14. So that's what we want for a 52 volt battery, and then I'll make the battery capacity 8 amp hours. Right. So then we'll go to general, advanced. So the minimum input voltage, I'm going to make it 35, and the maximum input voltage, I'm going to make it 15, I'm going to make it like 60. So I'm going to write, and then under general voltage, battery voltage cutoff start 41, battery voltage cutoff end 35. So then the regen cutoff start, I'm going to make it 58, and then the regen cutoff end, I'm going to make it 58.8, right. Alright, so our battery should be showing up right. The motor temp appears to be right. So let's see here. Profiles, let's do regen off. I'm going to use that till reboot. So let's make it go without regen. Oh, come on. Hello? GoPro? GoPro. Hello, are you there? Wow. So let's make the motor go. There we go. Nice. There we go. So we got that thing working again. Let's turn the regen on. Boom. Alright. And so what I'm going to do this time, to hopefully not destroy... Let's see here. Let's go to motor config current. So the motor current is 79. Max brake is negative 79. I'm going to increase the absolute maximum current to like 150. We're going to write that. Battery current max. Usually leave it about 30 amps. So the max regen, I have it set to negative 25 amps. I didn't even have regen as high as I thought I did when the nylon gears broke. So let's go to my app config. And we'll go to ADC. So then on my throttle, this negative ramping time, I want to increase this. Because when this is too small of a number and the ramping time is too fast, it's not good for nylon gears. So I think 0.3 is fine on the positive. I'm probably going to increase this negative ramping to point. I might make it ease onto the regen a little bit. We'll just try 0.3. I'm not going to test it out right now. It's dark out and it's cold out, so I'm not going to go outside, but I'll just leave that at 3. So you could also lower the motor current max brake or the battery current max regen, especially if your battery can't handle charging at 25 amps like this. Like, you would want to lower this to however much your battery can charge at. So it seems like we fixed the G62 hub motor. Oops. Appears to be working. Is the regen still on? Yeah, I think it is. Oh, so that's kind of interesting. So it doesn't break as hard. See that? So on 52 volts, we got about 37 miles an hour. No load speed. Seems like I might have to adjust my brake caliper a little bit, because I changed the spacing on when I didn't have that spacer in there last time underneath those lock nuts on the motor, like the space. Alright guys, well, GoPro is overheating, but I'm glad we got that sorted out today. We repaired the G62 hub motor. So I've got to adjust my brake caliper a little bit. It was making some noise there because when I didn't have that spacer in there before, it was kind of affecting the spacing of everything. And so I need to readjust my brake caliper now that I've adjusted that. I also had to adjust my derailleur slightly so that all the gears were indexed correctly. So you want to make sure you put your motor back together correctly. Lots of funny things happen, and then things break, and terrible things happen. And it takes all day to fix all the problems, instead of just having to put a couple new nylon gears on. So, I hope you learned something new in this video. Thanks for watching along. Make sure you like and subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think about this episode of the Bafang G62 hub motor repair fiasco. The latest installment of many. I've repaired this thing many times in the past. Magnets come loose, all kinds of things happen. So make sure you check out my other videos on the Bafang G62 hub motor. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace out.